Build a MIDI pedal board, they said. It'll be great, they said. And it is really cool. I love being able to switch my tones with just one button. The problem is, that takes a lot of programming. Even just for these 4 pedals, it can take up to 11 MIDI messages just to make a switch. Now, if you're on the road and you're playing the same songs every night, it can be worth it to put in that time. But if you're the average musician like me, and you're learning new songs for gigs, or you're just building new tones in the studio, I wanted a way to be able to work faster. So I came up with my own solution. Let's head over to Ableton. Welcome to Ableton. The first thing I want you to pay attention to are these 6 red group tracks up here. Each of these represent an individual tone that I've created for my pedal board. However, they're not saved in my pedal board at all right now. They only exist within Ableton. The only tone saved in my pedal board is this clean tone, which you can hear coming in on this guitar channel over here on the left. Now I've given each of these group tracks a shorthand name. The first one is called D8 WRB, which stands for dotted eighth warble, which means a dotted eighth delay with a fair bit of modulation. Dual stands for dual delay. DRK fuzz with 1 Z stands for dark fuzz, and so on. Now, if I forgot what that meant, or I just wanted to hear more about what those sounded like, I've created these pink audio clips over here that I can listen to. Let's say I wanted to hear what dark fuzz sounded like. Now, if I wanted to save that dark fuzz sound in my pedal board, all I would need to do is open up the dark fuzz group track, click on this track called MSC Control, come down to this plugin that I've made, and press this button called Push All and Save. Now, within a few moments, every single setting, every little parameter that I need to make that tone is being sent out to each pedal on my pedal board, and it's being saved as a preset on those pedals. In fact, it's already done. Not only did it push out those settings to my pedals, it also saved a preset on my MIDI controller so I can recall that sound whenever I want. Now I can jump between my clean tone and right back to dark fuzz. Remember how I said it can take up to 11 MIDI messages to make a switch? Well, this is one of those presets. In fact, if we open up Detail View, we can see a list of all the messages that have been automatically saved for us. We have 2 for the Chase Bliss Preamp, 3 for the Strymon Mobius, 3 for the Timeline, and 3 for the BigSky. Now, how is this plugin able to do all this? Well, part of the answer to that is that this is not the only plugin that I've made. This one is actually specifically made for Morningstar MIDI controllers, but I've also made plugins for each of the MIDI controlled pedals on my board. That's why, if you look at this dark fuzz group, you can see there's 4 other channels here. 1 for the Chase Bliss Preamp, 1 for the Strymon Mobius, 1 for the Timeline, and 1 for the BigSky. These are fully featured plugins that allow me to remote control every single MIDI parameter on all of the pedals. I can bank and change presets remotely. I can turn the pedals on and off. On the Strymon pedals, I can select what algorithm I want, and all of the secondary functions are now at my fingertips. If I'm confused about one of the settings, I can just hover over it, and I've built info text into Ableton to help me out. On the Timeline, I can set the time however I please, whether it be in milliseconds or beats per minute, in whatever subdivision I want. I can also set the exact BPM if needed, which is super handy. All of the plugins are ready to be key or MIDI mapped. Here, I'm using a little DIY MIDI controller I made to hit the tap tempo. Speaking of external controllers, I can also dial in tones using an Ableton push too. Whatever I do on the push, the plugin and the pedal will follow. Now, if I didn't want to use a controller, automation works just like other devices in Ableton. For example, here I am using a clip envelope to automate the time knob up and down. Last but not least, if for some reason the settings on my pedal got messed up or erased, I can use the local push function to quickly push out my settings and save them wherever I want. Basically, with these features and many more, my pedalboard could be rack mounted far away from me in another room and I could still dial in tones. But the coolest part to me is where we started, with those 6 red group tracks I called your attention to when we first booted up Ableton. Remember, each of these represent an individual tone that I've built for my pedalboard. However, besides dark fuzz now, they are not saved in my pedalboard. They only exist within Ableton. When all these plugins come together, Ableton becomes the preset manager for my pedalboard. As long as I have this project file, I have these tones whenever I want. This means I can make project files that contain all the tones that I need for a specific song or a particular gig and not have to worry about accidentally overwriting them for another song. This means if I'm producing a song and I make a really unique guitar tone for it, I can save that sound inside the project file itself. That way, if I get busy and that song gets archived for a while, when the day comes to revisit it, I don't have to worry about reverse engineering that tone. I can even make little audio clips to remind myself what the heck I was thinking. Okay, hopefully you've caught a glimpse of the power that these tools have for the workflow of a MIDI pedalboard. I've put all these plugins up on Gumroad, and you can find the links in the description of this video. On those product pages, there's more in-depth tutorials talking about how to get started and how to build presets step by step with more detail than I could fit into this video. Share this with somebody who you think might benefit. Like, subscribe if you want to stay tuned. I hope these plugins help someone out there make some music. And I'll see you soon.